And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome to the show today, live from Australia, Hayley Scrivenor, here to give us the inside scoop about her brand new book, Dirt Creek. Hayley, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Look, Dirt Creek is the story of Esther Bianchi, a young girl who doesn't make it home from school one day. It's also the story of the people around her when she goes missing. So we hear from her best friend. We hear from a boy who saw her on the day she went missing, but is too afraid to come forward and tell police what he knows for his own reasons, which you have to read the book to find out. We also hear from her mother, whose world is really falling apart around her, and that we have the investigating officer, Detective Sergeant Sarah Michaels, who really comes into this small country town and has to unpick not just what's happened recently, but kind of what's happened in the past to understand and ultimately solve kind of the mystery of what's happened to Esther Bianchi. So that's Dirt Creek.
Ooh, well, first of all, I just wanted to praise you for picking the best name of an investigator ever. Clearly a brilliant woman, Hayley Scrivener. And I can't wait to get into every delicious detail. But first, I just want to welcome everyone. So we are broadcasting live to 6 different destinations, as we always are. So no matter where you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. It is Mystery Monday, because Mondays can be murder. We're going to make them a little less painful. So every Monday, I give you my hand-picked featured authors, and you get to ask them anything. So ask Hayley about her life in Australia, her writing process, why this book, why now, what her favorite scene is, what about this cover. She earned a starred review from Publishers Weekly, likening her to Jane Harper, who has also been on the show, huge Jane Harper fan, and Liane Moriarty. So much to discuss. So whatever questions you have hanging out in your brain, just get them going in the comments. I'll get them right over to Hayley. Let's kick off right now. Catch a clue. Hey, Wendy, welcome to the conversation. Always a pleasure to see your name pop up. She says, hi, Sarah and Hayley. Hey, Wendy. Happy Monday. If you're watching from a private Facebook group, which we're broadcasting to 2, you can stay mysterious, as we have someone here saying sounds intriguing, or you can enable privacy settings and let us see who you are. Your choice. It is Mystery Monday, after all. It is intriguing. So let's kick off there. Hayley, walk us through the inception point of this book. Where were you? What made you think of this idea? Tell us all the things.
Well, I have a very clear memory of the kind of origin point of Dirt Creek. And I should explain. So the title comes from the fact that the town is called Durton, and the kids in the town call it Dirt Town. And of course, by that logic, the creek that runs through the town is called Durton Creek, becomes Dirt Creek. And so that sort of, I think, sets up, I guess, the fact that it's very interested in not just the place, but the places it's experienced by the children that live there. And so as a bit of context for this, I feel like it's worth putting out there that I grew up in a small country town. And so I actually was meant to be writing a different book when I sat down to write the short story that would become Dirt Creek, because I was working on a PhD at my local university, the University of Wollongong here in Australia, where I am. And I had pitched a totally different idea, and I was sort of stuck. And so I thought, I'm going to write this short story. And I was like, oh, what could I write about? And I had this image of the children in my town coming home from school. And I was interested in this style of narration that's where people speak together. They speak collectively. You know, they say, we came home. We, unpacked our bags. We headed for the fridge. You know, I was really interested in that point of view, or that voice, and that's what I was looking at in my PhD. And I thought, well, okay, I'll talk about these children coming home from school. And if they're using that collective voice, if they're saying, we did this, it made me realize when something big happens and you're kind of brought together with the people you're with by an experience that kind of makes you stop and take stock of where you were and what you were doing when it happened. And so it occurred to me that these children were coming home and thinking about how they'd gotten home that day because a girl had gone missing from their small town. And so that it really began with just this idea of, oh, I'll write what I know, these details of these children coming home. And then it was like this idea came in. And once Esther was missing, it sort of set a whole chain of events kind of in action, I suppose. And that was really, I can really clearly remember the afternoon. And the piece of writing that is the children coming home from school, I think is now chapter 4 or 5 in the book. I made changes and additions, but that little core, that little nugget that would become Dirt Creek is still in there. Yeah.
I love that. The little core, the nugget that would become Dirt Creek. That's so fun to learn the backstory. And our mystery viewer has revealed that it's Christine. Hey, Christine. So great to see your name pop up as always. Thank you so much for joining us. Margaret, welcome to the conversation, saying hello. Extra credit for an author with an accent. Sarah, I'm so easy. Yes, Margaret, we love an accent. Am I right? Everything just sounds better with an accent. Margaret, thank you for joining us as we get the skinny tonight on Dirt Creek. And Hayley, thank you for giving us the scoop about your own small country town background, Wollongong. My friend Ben was actually born in Wollongong as well. So it's so cool to know how that informed your telling of the story. So I let people submit some questions in advance. So let's get to some of those as well. So, okay, we'll just start diving into the list. Do you have a favorite scene in the book and why?
Oh, that is an excellent question. And before I go into it, I should clarify. So I live in Wollongong now, which compared to the town where I grew up is infinitely kind of more cosmopolitan and bigger. So I grew up in sort of central New South Wales, which is very far away from the coast and dry and all of those things. Kind of whereas where I am now is quite lush and coastal. And so if someone is here who knows Wollongong, they'll go, well, hold on, Wollongong isn't a small country town. And I'll just clarify that. And then in terms of a favorite scene, that is such an interesting question, because I guess as a writer, sometimes the scenes that come the most quickly or have some kind of sense that they have always wanted to be written are very pleasurable in and of themselves. And I would say that the beginning, what became the very beginning of the book, was written very late in the process. And there was this sense that I knew everybody, I knew all the moving parts, I knew what structurally was going to happen. And so that scene was probably my favorite to write, because it just it took me years to get to that point. But when I was ready to write that scene, it just kind of flowed out. So that there's that. But one of the earlier scenes I wrote that I tinkered with a lot, which I really love, is also another scene very early in the book where Esther, the girl who will go missing, and her best friend Ronnie are kind of playing in the backyard, and Ronnie wets herself. You know, she's being tickled by Esther, and there's this moment where that's so embarrassing, and so she kind of thinks, oh, Esther's going to want nothing to do with me. And I think that's the first moment where we realize that Esther is a really special person, because she wets herself as well in solidarity. And there was a moment where I just realized, that is Esther. And then years later, even after I'd submitted my book to the publisher, I think I was watching the Dry movie, and there's a scene, someone mentioned that there's a Jane Harper scene where two characters wet themselves. I was like, oh no. But I think that happens when you're right. You know, you're drawing from the universe. And I know that I hadn't read the Dry when I wrote that scene. So yeah, so I do feel like that's the moment where I fell in love with Esther. So I'll always be grateful for that.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I'm such a huge Jane Harper fan, and Jane has been on the show as well when The Survivors came out. And what I love about Jane's writing is how the elements of nature become a character themselves. The outback, the sea, the wildness of Tasmania, of Tassie or whatever, how the elements themselves become not just part of the story, but a character. And it's so great to know, to see that your work is being likened to her and compared to her in your own starred reviews. Congratulations on that. And Nisa, welcome to the conversation, saying hello, Sarah and Hayley. So excited to hear more about this book. Anissa, what a pleasure to see your name pop up always. Catherine, welcome to the conversation, saying hi all. I am totally intrigued by the description of Dirt Creek. Yes, indeed. And I'm seeing some chatter in the bookstore community saying Dirt Town. You referenced that as well. Is it called Dirt Town in Australia, Hayley?
It is. So the skinny on that, the kind of behind the scenes on that is Dirt Creek was a title that my US publisher really loved. And, you know, I explained that Durton is the actual name of the town, Durton. And so, but the US loved Dirt Creek, and they had this wonderful cover, which is, we really only had one pass at the cover, and I love it so much. It's exactly what I had in mind. You know, they basically showed me that at the very, like, it was the first version of the front cover I saw, and I instantly fell in love with it, and I was so amazed that what was in my brain had been translated. And so it you know, I loved it so much. But here in Australia there was a film called Wolf Creek, which was very kind of popular and it's very kind of brutal. It's one of those gory horror kind of movies, and it's sort of set in a kind of similar setting. It's kind of, you know, set in the outback. And I just didn't want that connotation that I knew Australian readers would bring to it if it was called Dirt Creek in Australia. And ultimately, you know, because I'm published here in Australia and the UK, and they stayed with Dirt Town, and the US were like, no, we really like Dirt Creek. And so at the end of the day, I love both. And one thing I love is Dirt Creek is an important site in the book. You know, if you've read it, you know that important things happen there. And I do like how a different title almost kind of leads you into the book a little bit differently, or you pay attention to that location a little bit more when that's the title. So it's not ideal, and I do get messages from people kind of asking me to explain it. But at the end of the day, I really stand by that decision, because I think my US publisher has gotten behind it so much. And I think they did that because they do love the title, and they feel like they can sell this story and this cover. And so I wouldn't change it, really. Even though I know it can be confusing for folks.
It's so interesting because we know that it, of course, gets translated into different languages, you know, not just, you know, translating the name Dirt Creek into, let's say, German, or, you know,
it's going to be in Lithuanian, so for example, which will
exactly. But also they change the name of the actual book and then translate that. So it's fascinating to see how it changes internationally. And Nisa saying, "I love when there are different titles." Yeah, I was.
Oh, thank you, Nisa. Because I get so many people saying, "Why did you do that? I wouldn't have done that." And I sort of, you know, it wasn't a decision we made lightly, but it makes me feel like I wrote more than one book sometimes. So I like it. You know,
Hayley has written 27 books. They're all versions of Dirt Creek. I love it. Margaret, going back to the moment that that you learning that you and Jane Harper both had characters that had these same kind of moments, saying this is how Elizabeth Gilbert would say that the muse was visiting multiple people, having the same sort of scene or originate organically in different people's minds, in different people's books, and come out in different ways. Hayley, what's your relationship like to the muse? Do you feel that creativity flows through you? Do you feel you are divinely visited? Do you feel like, no, you're going to sit there and pound out the words? What's your relationship like to creativity?
I'll just say I do love Big Magic, and I love how Liz Gilbert talks about that in Big Magic as well. And that idea that when an idea comes, if you're not responsive, you know, if you go, oh, no, not now. And I've done some workshop with Sarah Centillis, who talks about that. You know, if you're not receptive and you don't say, okay, then the thoughts kind of go, well, this isn't a safe place for us to be. This isn't a safe place for us to hang out. And so I think it's interesting because the muse as this personified kind of person, I think is kind of, I understand why that resonates with some people. But for me, I really like to think of it as more like a vending machine. So sort of, it's almost like a vending machine where you show up and you put in your quarter and you kind of pull, you know, you push the button and whatever comes, and you kind of have to deal with it before you can put in another quarter and kind of get the next thing. So I do think I'm definitely not someone who is able to, or who thinks about it as like, I'm waiting for the muse to come for me to write. Much more, it's I'm going to sit here, I'm going to put in my quarter, which is 25 minutes of attention. I work in these little, you know, it's the Pomodoro technique. You can Google it, but it's essentially a time 25 minutes on and then a 5-minute break. That's how I wrote Dirt Creek, you know, in those 25-minute little chunks. So I put in my quarter and I kind of pull or push the button, and whatever comes out, I kind of deal with it. And I do think that ties back to that idea of if you honor each of those ideas and you try and you kind of put them down, even though you're not sure where they're going to go, one thing that I know is true of my writing is I have to let it be a bit chaotic and messy and not know where it's going for quite a long time. But what's so great is when those moments start to cohere and talk to each other in ways that your conscious brain never knew was possible. But when you step back and look at your story towards the end of a second or third draft, it's so much more complex than the sum of its parts. And that is magic to me. So while I don't believe in a kind of personified muse, I do believe in in the power of narrative and of something, a mind or a consciousness that's kind of doing work that I can't see. Yeah.
So I'm intrigued. So first of all, I have tried, and I sometimes use the Pomodoro method as well. So I am not a diehard. It's not like the only way I work. I'll start doing, sometimes I will work for several hours in 25-minute bursts, and then 5-minute rests that sometimes turn into slightly longer minute rests.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah. It takes so much longer than that to make a cup of tea and go to the bathroom. And,
it really does. And also like the 25 minutes of work feels like 2.5 hours of work, and the 5 minutes of rest seems like a nanosecond. So sometimes I find myself, resting for an hour.
Yeah,
it's hard.
I feel that, but that makes a little sense to me.
But it's interesting because in the Pomodoro method, you set the timer for 25 minutes, you go, then you rest for 5 minutes, sprint for 25 in concentration. So I am fascinated to learn that you use the Pomodoro method to write this whole book. That's really cool. And I love the idea of creativity as a vending machine. So let's talk about that a little more, because you put your quarter in and you see what comes out. So 2 questions. First of all, Catherine says she really likes that explanation. Catherine, it's so cool, right? Margaret saying something doing work that I can't see. Yes, to that old mysterious brain, right? Margaret, we're totally vibing with this. She's saying our author tube writing sprints are more like 20-minute sprint, 15-minute chat, and kvetch. Totally resonate, Margaret. I'm feeling this. Hayley, so let's go back to the vending machine analogy. So 2 questions. Number 1, what if you ain't got no quarter? What if you are just like fresh out of quarters that day and you're just like, do you ever try jiggling the machine and just see what comes out for free? And then the second part of my question is, what if you don't like what comes out, or what if you don't know what to do with comes out? Like, what if you come out and you're like, tell us more about this. I'm fascinated.
So both of those situations that you described, Sarah, are the default. So I very, very, very rarely sit down and find I've got change in my pocket, if you know what I mean. I'm often, but what it is I find is if I can get to my desk at first thing, as early as possible in the morning, so I don't even make a cup of tea. I just come and I sit at my desk, and I bought this ridiculous. I bought what was meant to be an egg timer, like a sand timer, so that I wouldn't have to go on the internet. I wouldn't have to look at my phone to set a timer. And I make sure my computer isn't connected to the internet when I sit down. I ordered it and I thought it was going to be this big. And then it came and it's
Hayley, that's the best
in my head. But I do, I sit down and I turn this over and I sit there with the document open. And
that's 25 minutes right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it sort of doesn't matter how I feel about it or if I've got a coin. It's like the 25 minutes have started, and the document's open and there's no internet and there's nowhere else to go, and I just kind of sit there and sometimes I will even write like I'm not sure, I feel really stuck after yesterday, and just the act of writing that will go, well, maybe I feel stuck because it occurs to me that I don't actually know what she's doing there, and then I go, well, what is she doing there? And then suddenly you're into the story. So even though it can feel like a waste of time, and I think it was Margaret mentioned this idea of kvetching. I feel like complaining and thinking out aloud and finding a way to talk about or be engaged in the story, whatever way you kind of can, is really important. And I think complaining is a big part of my process as well, in terms of I really enjoy decompressing with my writer friends and saying, oh, this isn't working, because often you'll surprise yourself by articulating. Once you can articulate what's not working, often that can be your entry point. So I think this idea of feeling inspired or waiting for it's like, that's not how, that doesn't, I feel so rarely inspired that if I waited for that, I would not write anything. And so that, that answers part of your question, and then I'm trying to think what the second part was. So it's like, how do you get the coin? And
what if
and
you're
I
just
answered that.
what if you're just out of coins, and then what if you don't like what comes out, where you're like,
Oh, well, I never
or
like
what
what
if
comes out.
nothing comes out? What if
It's a simple answer.
is the
Yeah.
vending machine ever out of candy?
Yeah, I think like I said before, it'll sort of, so something will come down the chute, right? And I'll go, oh, okay, she likes banana milkshakes. And I'll go, this is not helping me write, book 2, follow up to the critically acclaimed Dirt Creek. Like, I am in trouble here. I don't like that thought. I don't see how it's important. But then I put it down. And then, what's interesting is, weeks later, there might be some connection back to that, or there might not. But I think one of the things I do is I check in. One thing I've learned and that I've gotten better at since writing Dirt Creek, I think, is I'll let it sit in the document, but I'll make sure that it's somewhere that I can see it and where it has a chance to kind of to brush up against other things that are going on for that character. And what I've realized is if you can keep track of that information, and find one other place that it's relevant, then it can kind of stay. And then if there's something that's in the document for a long time and it's not connecting to anything else and it's not, then I'll delete it. I'm pretty brutal. I don't feel a need to keep everything, and that's because that kind of helps the ideas come more easily if I'm saying, no, I'll just write it down and I'll kind of see what it has to offer. And everything's kind of given a bit of a waiting period where it's allowed to sort of make sense. And some things stay in the document for a really long time before I make any use of them. But certainly in that first draft stage, I'm just putting down what's coming. And the one thing I've gotten more efficient at or better at is thinking, how does this help me understand the characters? Because for me, character is at the core of every kind of fiction experience. I think if you can understand the people that you are dealing with and why they do the things they do, the story will flow from there.
Well, I love that. I love the idea of what you just said, that character is at the core of every fiction experience. And I also love how you describe your creative experience, and your relationship to creating and also receiving divine inspiration. I mean, I'm so fascinated by the creativity myself and generating ideas. So I'm loving this conversation, and whatever you're doing, it is clearly working, Hayley, because the New York Times book review raves a novel of sharp edged tempers, accidents waiting to happen, and dark inheritances, politically savvy and cleverly plotted. Now, first of all, congratulations on this incredible review, which you have earned from the revered New York Times book review. Let's dive into that, though. It sounds like you don't actually plot.
No.
Okay, so you fooled the New York Times book review, right? I mean, am I getting this right? So, because if you're putting your quarter in and you're seeing what comes out, you're following the process. You're not plotting. Is this correct?
Yeah. So I guess the only exception would be when I was talking about, I guess, having the idea that I knew Esther Bianchi was missing, and that was the sort of moment of the closest I get to
the people do
divine
not like
inspiration.
spoilers on here.
Well, I really don't think it's a spoil.
Totally.
Her body is found in the first page, so we know that she's kind of not coming back.
Yeah, no, I'm just warning you.
No. I would never dream. I would never want to spoil that experience.
They'll come for you, Hayley.
But one of the first things I knew was what had happened to Esther. So without giving that away, I'm just saying that I guess I knew that's where I was headed. So all of the other complexities of the plot, all of the other subplots, even the sort of central characters weren't clear to me at that point in time. But I did have an end point that I was heading towards. And that became something that I was able to check in with and see, okay, is this getting me closer to that end point or not? So I don't think I'll ever be a plotter, someone who sits down and plans the scenes early in the process, because when I said that character is at the core, for me, that's also true in literally how I write the book. So I have to spend time with the characters. It's kind of like spending time with real people. You know, you can go on one sort of outing with someone and get to know them a little bit, but often you'll find if you spend a lot of time with people and you interact with them in a number of different sort of settings, then you're going to have a much better sense of who they are. And so for me, I'm kind of just writing to keep myself company while I figure out who these people are and what they care about. And once I have that, which can take years, in the same way that it takes years to get to know the people that you love, you know, the people that you know really well, that process is a fruitful one for me. And so that's how I think I'm always going to have to write. I don't think I can say at the beginning, they're this kind of person and they do this. I really need to figure them out over a longer period of time. But then the joy of that is that they do things that feel right for them, but that are also surprising. You know, I'm not pushing to a mold that I decided on, months earlier.
So how long did it take you to get to know these characters? How long did it take you to immerse yourself in the world of Dirt Town in Australia / Dirt Creek in America? Start to finish, soup to nuts, A to Z. How long did it take you to create this?
So I started the short story that would become Dirt Creek in early 2016, so about March, April 2016. So and I submitted to publishers at the end of 2021. Yes.
Okay, 5 years.
Sorry, no, end of 2020. Yeah, so that is 5 years. Okay. Including kind of the 2016 to the end of 2020 is basically 5 years. Excellent. And then there was, editing happened obviously in that time as well, but it was really by the end of 2020, I think we'd put it to bed, and it was in the sort of state that it is, in here, except for some, the final copy edit and those kinds of things. But yeah, about 5 years is a fair estimate, I think.
Okay, I like it. Because I think as a reader, I can feel the difference in a book that has had the time to marinate, to ripen. And I can, just as I can taste a great sauce that has the flavors have had time to marinate versus a quicker sauce, which is still delicious, but hasn't had that time to fully ripen.
I love that. I love that idea, because I think so often, there are writers that write quickly, and I never want to denigrate them because I'm incredibly jealous of them. And I think particularly in the crime genre, so many writers, it's almost like they're making ramen, right? Like they're making something that is delicious and filling and sort of surprising and all, has these wonderful flavors, and they're able to kind of dish that up quickly. Whereas it does feel like I don't know what I'm making, but it's a very complex I just know that it takes the time it takes. You can't cook a lasagna in 20 minutes.
Exactly.
It's gonna take.
As an Italian woman who makes a mean lasagna, I am feeling this conversation, Hayley. I am feeling this conversation. And
they're both delicious, I guess it's also what I'm saying. I don't think that just because it takes me a long time, it's doing anything other than kind of being itself, I guess. And I don't think I will be able to be one of those writers who writes a book a year. Like people who write a book a year and they're satisfying and plotty and pacey, like, well, fair game to them. But I think one of the joys of being a writer is figuring out how you work and kind of what you need, and spending the time that you need to write the story that you care about, I guess.
Exactly. And, I think that there's a lot of pressure on not just authors to put out a book a year, but on everything. We live in a fast-paced world. So fast fashion, fast food, fast production, sort of revering or, celebrating the faster things. I've been working on my book for 9 years. I interviewed Wanda Morris, who's up for Book of the Year at BelcherCon and also Thriller Fest. And she wrote All Her Little Lies, which was one of my favorite books of the year. It took her 13 years. And it's like, I totally, and that's not to say that I love the authors who put out books a year, and I am in all of them. This is me bowing down. Teach me your ways, you brilliant people. But I also do love, and some, it's all about what you're in the mood for. Sometimes you want more of a slower meal. Margaret Pinard saying coq au vin. Exactly. Like you need that time. That's a full 19-hour dish. Margaret's suggesting I do authors in the kitchen. Sarah's next show. I'll do it, Margaret. I'll have, oh my gosh, put a little chef's toque on my head, and we talk about food and writing. I would be here. I would be here for it. Margaret also saying efficiency isn't everything, says the planet. Exactly. So I'm loving this discussion and the many different various ways. And again, I just want to say congratulations again on this fantastic review from the New York Times Book Review. Absolutely amazing, politically savvy, cleverly plotted. I mean, I would have this tattooed on my face if I was you. This is fantastic. And the New York Times is not the only one, Hayley. Seattle Times raving thrilling and atmospheric. I'm going to hop over to this one because I know Margaret is watching from the Pacific Northwest. So let's pop up a review here from the Seattle Times. Thrilling and atmospheric. Hayley Scrivenor's debut is a vivid, slow burn that unravels the baffling disappearance of 12-year-old Esther. Amazing words of praise there from one of our other favorite reviews, Publishers Weekly. Let's take a look at that starred review as well. I'm going to pop that up right here. They're saying, calling your debut, quote, stunning, blending a taut psychological thriller with a suspenseful police procedural, recommending you for fans of Liane Moriarty and Jane Harper. So first of all, I love me a police procedural because I like to pretend to be a detective, but I also love the thrill of a psychological thriller. So Hayley, when you first of all, do you have a favorite subgenre in the mystery? Are you a police procedural girl? Are you a thriller girl? Give us the scoop on your reading preferences.
It's funny, because the dark and scary truth is that I am a very do you have the word wuss? Like, do you? Yeah. So I read a lot more crime and thrillers now because I've realized that I can read them in the morning. Like if I put aside time in the daytime, I can read them. But I've been trying to fit in a lot more reading. I'm going to the United Kingdom soon to tour some festivals, and so I'm doing events and wanting to read. I'm reading a lot of crime at the moment, and I find if I leave it too late in the day, I don't sleep. I sort of, which is to say that I really love these books and I find them very affecting, and I particularly love like a slow burn psychological kind of thriller where you're embedded in sort of someone's point of view. And you're with them trying to figure out what's going on. I probably would say I resonate more with that than I do love a good police procedural as well. I love Kate Atkinson's Jackson. Is it Jackson Brodie? I do love when you're in someone who kind of has the skills and the talent to kind of work these things out. But I think what stays with me more is being in the mind of someone who isn't very equipped to kind of deal with what's going on. I always find that very powerful. And so I think in my own book, it's often described as a police procedural, and I can totally see why. But there are 5 points of view in my book, and only one of them is a police officer. So I do think I kind of I'm very interested in particularly the children characters and the way that they are understanding and trying to unpack what's happening. And so I think hopefully both work well. But I think in my own reading, I probably lean towards those more people who are thrown into a situation rather than being someone, which often happens in good police procedural anyway. They sort of, that crime or that thing that's happening has a specific significance for that person. And I do love when it feels like the detective is the only person who can solve that particular problem, right? Like something about them and their background makes them the kind of person who is uniquely suited to unfolding kind of what has happened. I love that. And I think that's true of my detective. I think Sarah, we haven't spoken about her much, but she's coming into the story at a point. She I think her experiences and what she's been through make her uniquely suited to solving what has happened to Esther Bianchi.
Hayley, Margaret would like to know, what festivals will you be attending? Let's hear about the festivals.
Well, the only one I think I can definitely tell you about is Bloody Scotland, which will be in Scotland on September 16th, I believe it is. I'll be part of a kind of fresh blood kind of panel, and there are other events, but I'm not allowed to speak about them yet. But I will be in the UK for 3 weeks, so you can kind of work backwards and figure out that I probably do.
Bloody Scotland sounds very fun. And while we're at it, let's head back to the points of view with the Margaret saying, what an interesting structure setup of these different points of view. So again, being called a police procedural with only one police character, and you're saying you resonate personally more with the children's. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Margaret saying also stretching the genre labels a bit. Exactly. And it's kind of fun to do that. Like, we don't have to be narrowly defined by just one thing.
Absolutely. And I think often you're writing the story that you want to write, and later people come in and are putting labels on it, which are useful, right? They're useful for the reader. They're useful for people who are trying to put your book in the hands of readers. But I think your obligation or your responsibility is always to the story first, and to let it be what it wants to be, and so, yes, the 5 points of view are really something, you'll remember I said I started with this collective of children, and they're kind of the voice of the town in some ways. I think of them as a Greek chorus who come in and kind of comment on the action, and they're a bit strange and a bit odd, but they begin and end the story, and ultimately they're the vessel that allow us to understand what's happened to Esther Bianchi. But the other points of view were introduced very much for us to have a number of different ways for looking at the missing girl at the heart of my book. So I think the missing girl's mother is just as important as the police officer, is just as important as the 11-year-old boy who sees Esther on the day she goes missing, who's just as important as her best friend, So I do think I really enjoyed taking the children in my book in particular very seriously, and kind of giving them the full suite of emotions, and kind of really letting them, like, really trying to get into how you would think and how you would feel after something like this happened. And one of the most satisfying things has been that kind of resonating with readers and them saying, oh, this felt like you took childhood seriously, because that was definitely one of the goals.
Ooh, that's interesting. Well, clearly you've taken you've taken an innovative genre expanding, label stretching, as Margaret correctly said, approach, and it's resonating. I want to get to some more of this amazing press, but Wendy saying, I am joining, she said, clarifying, I am joining Bloody Scotland virtually from the US. I will see if I can find you. Wendy, thank you for letting me know that virtual was an option. I did not know that. Thank you. Margaret saying, I wished to go to the festival. Margaret, we should go virtually. That sounds absolutely, now that Wendy's let us know that's a possibility. Bloody Scotland and the Fresh Blood panel sounds super fun and super cool. And clearly, again, this I don't want to say genre bending, but genre label stretching approach that you have taken is working, Hayley. Also earning a starred review from Booklist, saying that the book brims over with head-spinning, mind-bending surprises. It will draw the inevitable comparisons to Jane Harper's The Dry, but it proceeds boldly under its own unique power, a brilliantly crafted debut. And speaking of Jane Harper, she said, this is a heart-wrenching mystery. Your remarkable sense of place, and who knows place better than Queen Harper, brings Dirt Creek to life. Dirt Creek to life, a stellar debut. Congratulations on all of this amazing press and amazing reviews, Hayley. It's absolutely fantastic to see all of your hard work. 6 years in the works, gestating this, being honored in this way.
It's so special to hear from from writers, I think. I mean, all the reviews are incredibly important, I think, and helpful, but there's something, I guess you get that writerly feedback often before your book comes out and you get official reviews. So that quote from Jane Harper and many of the other people that really went out of their way to read my book and endorse it and say this is good, is so sort of heartening when you've been alone in a room for years and years with this sort of object and you have no idea if it even makes sense anymore. So when writers you admire take the time to sort of to put it out there that they think your book is worthwhile, it's very special.
It's very special, and it's also very interesting because no other creative endeavor asks its fellow creators to validate it. We don't ask other actors to say that a movie is brilliant. We don't ask other directors to say the movie's brilliant. We don't ask other singers to say, the new I can't even think, Maroon 5 is really good. It's a uniquely weird thing that writers are expected to validate each other's work and to deem it good or not. But I think you're right. Like and it's vulnerable to ask people, to say, can you read my book and share what you think? Margaret saying blurbs are so weird, public awkwardness. Exactly. But when you get these kind of reviews from Anna Bailey, Adam Hamby, Chris Hammer, Catherine Mayan Howard, Hannah Kent, Anne Cleves, I mean, the list goes on and on and on, as well as industry places like BuzzFeed and Crime Reads, and putting all of these in there. It is heartening and validating. Margaret wondering aloud, why do we have to go through that? It's weird, right? Because when you look at, literally every other creative endeavor, and it's not just creative endeavors. Like we don't ask other builders to say, this is a good house, this is well painted. It's very interesting that we expect authors to do that.
I love that observation, and I've never thought of it that way. And I think I have an answer. You know what it is, though?
Tell us.
It's that reading a piece of writing. So you can take in a painting, you can take in a song in a relatively short period of time, right? So why writers' endorsements are so important is that investment of time and that summary or that reporting back from the end of a fairly durational, kind of experience. It can take 8, 10 hours. 12 hours for however many days to read a book. And so maybe that's why they're so useful, because you can see a painting and see if it's good or not in the blink of an eye. So maybe that's why.
That is a really interesting point. And honestly, I'm a slow reader. So 12 hours, I'm thinking, my God, who reads that fast? It takes me a really long time to read, actually. So I think that's a really, really insightful point. Thank you, Hayley. And I just want to let everyone know that yes, it is possible to head to Bloody Scotland virtually. Here is the link. So it's bloodyscotland.com. So check it out. You can go see Hayley and so many other amazing writers speaking there. And also check out this fabulous review from BuzzFeed. I read Dirt Creek in one sitting because of Scrivenor's excellent writing, fascinating plot, and no nonsense female detective, Sergeant Sarah Michaels. I'm fluffing my hair like I'm her. I'm not. Anyway, so many amazing reviews. And y'all, the book just came out August 1st. It's out now. So I'm going to pop the link right here in the comments, and you can grab your copy of this book, which again, just getting rave reviews from so many writers, as well as review sites, newspapers, the New York Times, the Seattle Times, so many amazing places. So grab your copy tonight, and you too can immerse yourself in the world of Dirt Creek in Australia, Dirt Town. Hayley, thank you so much for joining us tonight, to give us the scoop on Dirt Creek, for giving us, walking us through the publishing process, your writing process, and it's been so fascinating to get that inside scoop. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and it's so lovely to be asked these kinds of questions about your writing. You know, I said you spend a lot of time alone in a room, and it's just so joyous to come out and find people are kind of interested in your imaginary friends. You know, I still get such a kick out of it. So thank you.
Your imaginary friends. I like that. Wendy saying, Hayley, congratulations on your book release. Yes, thank you for all of you for spending your Mystery Monday with us, because Mondays can be murder. Hayley, thank you for joining us all the way from Wollongong, from New South Wales, Australia. And it has been a pleasure chatting with you. Anissa saying, thank you, ladies. Thank you for joining us. Have an amazing time at Bloody Scotland. Everybody, if you want to join Bloody Scotland virtually, there's the link. Don't forget to order the book. It is out now. And Hayley, let us know when your next one is out. Come back and chat with us some more.
Oh, wild horses wouldn't keep me away.
Yay! All right, everybody, have a great rest of your Monday. I'll be back. Oh, hey, readers, gotta read. Hey, girl, I see you. Always a pleasure to have your name pop up. Thank you so much for joining us. I will be back next Monday with Alice Feeney, live from the UK, William Kent Kruger, and the week after that, I got Karen Slaughter coming back for year 2. So we have an all-star lineup coming up, y'all. We're going to close out the summer with a bang. So I will see you next Mystery Monday. Have a great week until then.
Thanks.